Okay, my friends, this is the first look at the DPR Texture Generator. I'm hoping you're following along on the threads, but in the end, this is something that's going to simplify our lives. This is basically trying to get realistic textures in minimal amount of time. And in the end, I think I've created something really neat, and it will only get better with time and hopefully with your input. Definitely a little hesitant on the release at the moment. Maybe Foresight and Trackman will be watching this nervously. But in the end, what happens is this is a program that loads, or just a file that loads into Substance Player. Substance Player is free, and it will load sbsar files. Those are created in Substance Designer, and when you load it, it'll look like this. Now, this is really not going to be a tutorial or anything. I just kind of want to give you some insight to how this works. When you're working with the file, depending on how your computer is in terms of graphics card and CPU and RAM, you may want to turn down the output size so that you can work on the file a little easier. And then when it comes to exporting, you can always bump this back up and then export to the size that you want. I usually export at 2048, and then you can down-res in Unity as needed. It really depends on what you're using the file for. Ultimately, there are really three things I want to show you here. Is one, just how the heck to use this. Two, how we can utilize it in Unity for CourseForge or any kind of texturing that we would want to do. You don't have to only use this for CourseForge. It can be used to texture rocks or texture anything that you would really be able to create something that you'd like with this. But and then the last thing is to show you how I'm using this with the Stix shader and using it to plant grass. And I'll jump to that real quick and just show you sort of a preview here, is that I'm going to be able to generate these maps to tell it where to plant grass and where not to plant grass, but it's all going to happen without me doing anything. It just happens in the background, and an alpha mask gets created, and then we combine those in Photoshop. So this might go on for about 15 minutes just because I want to show you some things, so I apologize if you want to just jump around, and hopefully you'll be able to find what you were looking for here. But the only thing I can't randomize is colors, so it'd be kind of fun if you could just hit this randomize button and get a bunch of different textures. But to show you to start how this is built is kind of going to be important, so you know what's happening. And it's easier to turn everything off to start so that you don't get confused. And now I know, I'm sure you would say, well, then why don't you just have it start with everything off? Well, if I just showed you a green square when you open this, I think you'd probably close it or you'd get too nervous. But this builds layers for us. So if you go from top to bottom here, you're just building from the bottom layer up. And essentially, these grunge layers that we're going to start with, these base grunge 1, 2, and 3, are really building up our greenery. Now, it could also be a bunker, so you might want to start with sand or like mud, and then build dirt, and then put sand on top of the dirt, and then maybe put a little bit of rock kind of color on top of the sand. So it's not only going to be restricted to grass type things either, I don't think. And really, the beauty of this is I have no idea what you're going to do with it. You know, you can just play around with it, and if you do something really cool with it, just come back and let us know. So the first thing, grunge 1, the first thing you're going to want to do actually before that is sort of pick your base color. And so this is going to be the overriding theme color for whatever you're working on. And obviously we're just starting with green. And then I'm going to turn the grunge on. And so this first one is sort of like a, just our, I guess I would say mid-tones, is maybe what you want to go for. And you can just play around with these dials and see what they do. I'm not going to tell you what they all do. I just want you to end up experimenting and sort of figuring some things out on your own. Now, the first thing I do with the grunge one is I like big shapes on this. So we're going to go kind of big to small when we're building this. And you can kind of get whatever result you're hoping for here. And then remember, it's just more variation on top of more variation creates something that looks realistic. So now I'm going to put grunge 2 on, and okay, this map's kind of really overwhelming a bit. You can see it brings in a lot of these dots, and then the colors over here. I didn't show you the base grunge 1 color, but that was sort of a mid-tone. I mentioned that. And then this is, I'm going with a little darker tones here, you know, so it's almost a black. I'm going to kind of tone that down a little bit. You know, maybe just something deeper, but then we can fade it, you know. We don't have to have it be so overwhelming, but just something to break it up a little bit, you know, and you can decide, oh, do I want small or big shapes? You know, now we're kind of medium shapes here. And then we're going to go jump to grunge 3. I'm going to close these down just because of spacing issues. Grunge 3 I'm using, and you don't have to use it this way, I'm using this for like small bits on top, you know, so, and then you can zoom in. This is zoom to fit, but you can jump way in here to see what's happening. And so this is sort of this like little lighter bits. Maybe it's like, you know, maybe a fungus or something growing on your grass. This is like whatever, it could be sedge or what, red thread, you know, whatever you want to do here. But, you know, you could pick a color. I don't really want red thread, but maybe that's what's happening here. But obviously that would be too much. You know, we've got a problem here. And so you can bring it down. Now, pattern 3 or grunge 3 has a few more controls than the other, and it's in this amount number, just because I wanted to give you something a little different, you know, and maybe you didn't want so much red thread everywhere. And so we're going to kind of break this up a little bit. Yeah, okay. Let me zoom back in and see if I like that. Yep, that's looking good. So, and remember, we're going to stack a bunch of stuff on top of this. Still, we've got dirt and mow lines and divots to put on top of it, you know. So we're moving through this fairly efficiently. And now I'm going to put some mow lines on. Now, with the mow lines, there's also track lines. So the mow lines X going this way, left to right, and then the mow lines Y go up and down. You can control the number. The weird thing is I've got it set that you should only be able to go in even increments, but it's not working right. And the only reason that's important is because when I turn my tracks on, now this is like the, sorry, this is like the tracks of the mower here. And you can turn those lines on or off. You know, so maybe think of this. This is like a green, you know, but there's so much grunge here. And so you can turn the grunge down on the mow lines because, you know, your green's kept a little nicer. And then it's too bright, you know, so you're going to turn the opacity down on it and just get a hint. And now you can turn the Y on as well so that you get your checkered pattern. You can rotate it. You know, you can rotate just the Y only or the X and the Y. Now, when you rotate it, it does have a protected rotation so that we don't get issues when I have those track lines. So what you'd have to do is decrease your line number if you want it to look similar throughout your course, so you have it, you know, so that I dropped that from 10 to 5 there to make that look right. But you'd actually want to do it from 10 to 6 because of that even increment issue that I said before. But anyway, you'll see that when you get to play with it. You'll know what I mean. But let's see. Let me put the Y rotation back. And then let me get rid of the Y, put the tracks back on the X. Okay, and then you can control, obviously, how light or dark these are. So this X opacity, we can kind of fade that. And then another cool thing is I'm going to bring up the ability to see this just so I can change this for you on the fly. But this waviness strength, if I drop my waviness strength, it's going to make straight lines. And so that's mixing with this sort of bubbly map I've got. And so then you can even change the waviness scale for who knows what kind of weird result. But in the end, you know, you're not going to cut a straight line. The important thing about procedural textures is just keep layering confusion and oddities and randomness on top of things. You know, that's more nature. And let me zoom in here to show you the edge strength thing here. So I have this little edge breakup. I just didn't want it to be too clean. And I noticed I lost my blur. So I'll put a blur back on there. But this edge breakup, you know, it's how strong the edge breakup happens. And then the scale of the edge breakup. And I have a blur. I don't know how that came unlinked, but I'll put a blur back on here. Honestly, Unity kind of blurs things anyway, because you're not going to really see it at that high a detail. But anyway, now let's add some dirt on here. Oops, I didn't want to leave. Let's go back to the mow lines. I don't want it to be that bright. So that's just my opacity. And actually, let me put it the other way. I know we keep showing this. I'll leave it. Okay. So here's the dirt. And now the dirt has sort of a location control. So you can kind of move it around your map. It's got 3 different amount controls. And they kind of interact with each other. So you don't think about it. You just move them. Just move the sliders. Don't even worry about how they work. Just move it till it does what you want it to do. You don't have to know how it works. And then that's pretty good. You know, I don't want a ton of dirt. And I'm going to do a dirt on and off texture. So I'm going to have a clean and a dirty. You could have a clean, a medium dirt, and heavy dirt. You know, and that would allow you to trace 3 different shapes in course forge, and then now you've got all of a sudden dirt control all over the course. Same with divots. So it's going to open up a lot of doors to somebody that's really creative. Kind of thinking a guy like Bordemus could do a lot of really neat things with this. So now divots. Let's turn the divots on. The divots, all they are just little bits. I'm going to bring up the size just so you can see what happens on this. So, and now I'm going to change the amount control so you can see the divot is really just this splotchy pattern I have. And so we're shrinking this to some infinitesimally small thing because we're going to tile this maybe at 20 to 30 meters on the course. And you got to have some guess at what the real size of the divot is. Now, the nice thing is you could just come back in here and fiddle it real quickly if it's too big. But now we need to break it up a little bit. You know, so we've got these disorder things which sort of affect the pattern. And then we're going to break it up, you know, break these divots up. Nope, wrong way. So we just don't want them showing that much. And it decreases the size of them, but also the amount, the appearance, you know. So now, and then we also have obviously color control. That's a little yellow. So let's make it, and we have some opacity control, so you could make it a little dark and then fade it with the opacity if you need to. I'm just going to zoom back in here. And let me turn my divots on and off, see what's happening there with it. Yeah, there's only like a divot on this part of the image. Okay. I think I like that. So, like I said, we're going to do a clean one. We're going to output a clean and a sort of dirty here. You could do a divot, no divot one. But, so then there's this final touch, which is sort of like post-processing. I don't really use it when I'm doing it because I kind of get it where I want it beforehand. But if you wanted to have your, and now a little bit goes a long way, I probably need to limit your control on these sliders a bit. But, you know, if you needed it to pop a little more for whatever reason, I think that the way you're going to end up using this post-processing stuff would be, let's get a base texture for the rough. And then, you know, the fairway is going to be a little lighter than the rough. And then you could literally just change your brightness here with these decimal place changes. And then you'd be able to output like 9 different textures or whatever in a short amount of time. So let's go ahead and push this out. Let me see if I can put this back to where it was, 0.5. That's not where it was. Maybe it was at 0.05. I'm going to put this one back at 0.5. Okay. So let's just output this and see what I'm talking about. And remember, I mentioned that alpha. That's just going to happen automatically. It's based on your dirts and divots. And so it's not going to plant grass in those spots. So let's go ahead and output that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably set the dirt and the divot alpha separately, so you could use it to make, you could use your divots to just make a color. Like if you wanted your grass to be brown, it would stay brown, but it would still plant the grass there. But I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But I'm going to export this here, and I'm going to export it directly into my perfect parallel project that I'm working on, just to show you how easy it is to update something, and then you can just export it right in the project, and then it refreshes. I'm going to call this rough. Let's do it as like tutorial rough, only because I have other ones in there and I don't want to get confused. And then, so this is, you know, this would be like heavy dirt or something. So this could be rough, heavy dirt. And now I'm exporting both those maps because I'm going to want it to do my grass plan. I'll show you. And then I'm going to, before I leave here, let's just turn the divots and the dirt off. Or let's leave the divots, but get rid of the dirt. And now I'm going to export this as just rough. It's my clean one. And I'm not really going to be using this one for planting grass. This would be more what you do in the fairway, to be honest. But so I don't need the alpha. Okay, so now we're going to head into Unity and show you how these get used. So it's going to refresh here and bring those textures in. Now I've been playing around, obviously, but let's go here on this sort of fairway section. And I know we've labeled it rough. And so in the rough, this is my clean rough. And that's, we didn't call it rough clean. We just called it rough. Tutorial rough. There we go. So here's my tutorial rough. And I'm going to regenerate that. Okay. You know, so you see that. And I don't like the value. That's too bright. So we'll show you how you can fix that quickly. And then let's go to my, these other splines I have are dirt, you know, rough dirt or grunge or heavy or whatever you want to call it. And let's regenerate all this. So obviously they go together seamlessly. So now you have the ability to draw dirt in wherever you want it. And then however light or heavy. Now, remember, I said I didn't like, you know, the value. This is too much. You're going to want to maybe tweak in here the value if, you know, and you can make it the same. Or if you want to keep that white and you want to go back and tweak, well, you can save your presets. So if you click here and you click new file, now you can save your presets. So if you happen to go on and or it was a different day, you could then reload, you know, the project that we worked on today. But this is where you would maybe utilize the brightness, or you'd go back and change the base color of it. But let's just use the brightness of this, and let's see what happens if we turn it down to 0.45. Yeah, you know, that's way too much. So 0.48. Okay, so maybe you like that. So real quick, now if I'm going to export this, and you just got to make sure this is the rough. You don't, that the other one was rough, heavy dirt, right? And well, yeah, this was the clean one. So we're okay to export this. So I'm going to export that. It's going to overwrite my clean one. And then, you know, you can put the dirt back on. And then now export this one, and I wanted the alpha for that, but this was the rough. Oh, my brain. Heavy dirt, hopefully. It doesn't matter. If it created another set of textures, who cares? Yep, I had them named right. So now it'll just overwrite those. And so that wasn't hard. And now let's show you how this can be utilized for the grass as well. So I've got a shader coming as well for the grass. And that's just because this is a mesh. This is not a, this is a CourseForge exported, re-imported. And so you can see it's an FBX here. And I've got a DPR grass shader coming that's going to allow you to do this. But so let me make sure I got the right texture in here. So if I put just the tutorial rough in, you're going to see something that happens here. Actually, I want the heavy dirt because I want my patchiness. When I bring that in, okay, so the base texture is that. Right now the grass is not being colored by that. So I got to go to the grass color. And those of you that have been doing 3DG know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to change the rough texture to be colored by that heavy dirt that I just made. But it doesn't have the alpha yet. So now it's going to match, and you see I'm going to have brown grass. And maybe that's what you want. You know, so you can use these layers, even though it's called dirt, it's brown grass in your head. It doesn't have to be name specific. Maybe I should remove the name so you're not constricted. But now let me show you what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this, and this doesn't take that long. It's going to take less than 2 minutes here. Hang with me. I'm going to take this heavy dirt into Photoshop and just add that alpha layer to it. I can't get it to export. It's just a substance thing. You got to bring the alpha layer in separately and just patch them together in Unity. Now, it comes as a 16-bit texture, so Unity hates these, and so you can't even pick it or delete it in here. So, you know, in the end, I'm going to go get that heavy dirt alpha. Where is that? Alpha, rough, heavy dirt. There we go. So I'm going to open this in Photoshop, and we're going to, all I have to do is here, watch how long this takes. Select all, edit, copy to the texture, go to the channels, make a new alpha channel, edit, paste. Okay. All done. Now I'm going to go File, Save, and now we're going to save this as a PSD, and then we'll have to swap this out on the grass shader. But now it's got an alpha connected to it, and what I don't know. I'm excited about this, but watch this. I got to go to the grass, and I go to the rough, and I'm going to drop in my new heavy dirt PSD in the grass. Boom. Now it doesn't plant on the areas that are brown. So obviously, you know, this is going to get us to a lot more realistic grass looks. And this is just the beginning. I got to feel like it's going to get a little better when you guys give me some input and I start tweaking and build on this base that I've got. So super excited. Hopefully TrackMan and Foresight have been watching. Who knows? Maybe it goes to the highest bidder. Anyway, enjoy.